we got to get into a topic here where it is. Look, I'm going to tell you this right now, folks. This isn't console warring. This is just let's read the room. And the room for PlayStation is that it's not the same as it used to be. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, depending on what side of the platform you fall on, you're going to have different opinions. Well, their leadership, bingo chart is completely off its kilter, right? Shuhei Yoshida, longtime gentleman gamer of the industry, leaves, retires, however you want to put it. We learned that Jim Ryan basically told Shuhei Yoshida, either you go here or you leave the company. Like, he's been doing a lot of big talking, right? Ted Price, one of the OGs of the industry, is gone from PlayStation and Insomniac Games, right? Well, we got some more information here. And this one over here, folks, depending on where you fall, I think PlayStation is not only in, I don't want to say trouble. I think that where PlayStation currently is making some big changes. And I think the PlayStation that you knew from the PS3 and the PS4 days, they don't exist anymore, especially when it comes to first party. And we're not going to talk about console sales. I know people immediately invoke, 75 million consoles. They are a good console maker. Listen, the PlayStation 5 is a great piece of tech, but it can't always be about that. I remember at a point, Silent Cypher, where console sales weren't a conversation. It was first party output and quality. And that has been eroded from PlayStation. They're just not the same anymore. Well, here's another big piece of change that is coming the way of Naughty Dog, right? Here is a story I pulled directly from VGC.com, written by one of my favorite authors there, or journalists, Tom Ivan. He posted this yesterday, and the lead title says this: The Last of Us creator casts doubt on a third game in the series. And this is a quote directly from Neil Druckmann. It says, "Don't bet on there being more of The Last of Us." Folks, that is incredibly telling. Now, I'm going to read the story verbatim, so bear with me as I do that. Tom goes on to say, Naughty Dog's president has cast doubt on the future of its The Last of Us game franchise, telling fans not to bet on there being a third entry in the long-running series. While Neil Druckmann has previously said there could be a third Last of Us game, as he thinks there's more story to tell, he has now suggested that might not be the case. And this is a direct quote from Neil Druckmann, who was interviewed by Variety. "I was waiting for this question," Druckmann said when Variety raised the prospect of a third game during the recent interview. He says this, folks, and I quote, "I guess the only thing I would say is don't bet on there being more Last of Us. This could be it." Druckmann said in April of 2021 that the story outline had been written for a potential third game in the series, but it wasn't currently being developed, and seemingly hinted at plans for a third Last of Us game in January of 2023. And this is what he told The Hollywood Reporter when he was interviewed: "I think there's more story to tell," end quote. Then, last February, Druckmann confirmed that he had a concept for a third game in mind, and that he thought there would be at least one more chapter in the story. Now, speaking in Grounded 2, a documentary detailing the development of The Last of Us Part 2, Druckmann said that he had wondered for years about a potential third game in the series, but could never think of something that excited him until now. And this is the last part of the story, folks, and I quote directly from Neil Druckmann: "I don't have a story, but I do have the concept that to me is as exciting as one and exciting as two in its own thing. Yet has this through line for all three games. So it does feel like there's probably one more chapter in the story, but unfortunately, that doesn't look like the case. Now, look, Silent, Fuzzy, and Chat. The problem that is currently happening at PlayStation Studios is money. And the reason why I say it's money is because they all but told us so. On his way out the door, Shuhei Yoshida literally told you, PlayStation fans, if you want sequels, if you want new IP, you have to purchase remakes and remasters. What does that say? They say that what that says to me, and this isn't console war, folks. This is just reading the room. Sony can't afford $315 million Spider-Man 2 budgets that get outplayed and outsold by Helldivers 2. Right? They can't afford Concord $400 million mistakes. This is the problem with PlayStation. They've already said that they're going to be making quote unquote smaller titles, i.e., Astrobot level sized games. And you know something? There's nothing wrong with that. Astrobot is a phenomenal title, worth its weight in gold, in my opinion. Even if you push back on me, it's fine. I loved every second of it. But the PlayStation that people knew from the PS4 days are gone. They're not coming back. And I think that this is another sign that once Intergalactic is done, Neil Druckmann is leaving. And that is going to be another staple gone. What are your thoughts, Silent Cypher?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the fact that the Sony that we know from like PS3, PS4 era, this isn't that same group. I would expound on that, and I would say that the only thing that's remaining from the PS3 and PS4 that we know is the arrogance. Because for them to come out and say, "Hey, you want new games? Go buy our remasters and remakes over and over again and deal with it. If you want to see a new game," that was a bit of an arrogant push just on its own. But the fact that we continue to see these decisions that have led this to this point at this time, right? Like they put 12 games as a service into play, and now they're down to 25% or less of that still actually in development. Like I called this way back. I was like, if you're putting 12 of those out there, it goes similar to what Fuzzy was saying about Gears. If you have both with multiplayer, you're going to cannibalize your user base somewhere, right? So if you have 12 games as a service, I'm sorry, but you're not going to retain all those people. They're not all going to be bangers. They're not going to be that Sony banger every time, all the time. And so they realized that and they closed them down. And now, again, like I said, about 25% of them remain. There's been a lot of bad decisions that I feel like got them to this point. And it felt like it continued and continued until they were to a point where they couldn't just change face and make a quick adjustment, right? Like you've got Totoki in there trying to make these decisions, but unfortunately he's been hamstrung by both Herman and also oh goodness, Jim Ryan. And so it's like you've got these decisions that they made that have left him in a bad situation to try and right the ship. And meanwhile, like you've got all the old guys making comments like, well, this is what it's going to be. And you're either going to have to support these remakes to get what you want, or you're not going to get anything at all. Is it a bad thing for Sony to focus on smaller titles like Astrobot? Like you said, there's nothing wrong with Astrobot. It was a good game. It rated well. It's a specific preference for certain people. And I think the thing that's going to be interesting to watch is all the diehard people that are like, we've got our AAA bangers over here at Sony. Suddenly, you're not going to have those AAA bangers. Then what's your story going to be? All of a sudden, you're like, well, it's not about the AAA bangers. It's about those unique, small experiences, which small experiences like that are great. Like, go back to the olden days of these systems, like Ape Escape. It was dumb, but it was fun. It was just a fun thing to jump into. They had so many smaller games back then, and it was back when Sony was weird. Sony, unfortunately, hasn't been the Sony I've appreciated or liked since PS2 because they just continued to step on the rake over and over again and get too cocky and arrogant for my liking. I like an underdog tale, and Sony has not been that, and they've been too cocky for my liking. So I don't want to see people lose jobs, but I do want to see Sony get slapped upside the head for the fact that they've made really bad decisions over and over again for a long time. And this has culminated to a point where they just don't have anything coming out. Um, and the idea that there isn't a Last of Us 3 in the hopper at this point, it's like you said, it points towards the financial side of things. Is they're in a situation where they're not able to support, like, him saying that he's got an idea of this thing coming out, in real life terms, that means that thing's not coming out for 5 or 6 years, right? So that means they've got to float their budget until that thing comes out 5 or 6 years from now, which puts you $300 to $500 million or more in the hole, even if they do it on a small scale. Meanwhile, we've still never gotten their multiplayer release because that was shelved, if not just completely thrown away. And as you said, we're starting to see people like long-term game dev career people like Price leave from Insomniac. They they did exactly what we said they were going to do. They were going to completely drill Insomniac into the ground and keep using them over and over again because they were making something good. They were the only one that was making anything good there for a minute. So they kept utilizing them to do these things, and they burnt him out. And he said, "No, I'm out." Like he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't have to do that. He's a talented guy. He can land wherever he wants, and he can start doing his own thing again. And that's what's going to happen with Last of Us too. And then it's going to be another thing that gets thrown over there on the bookshelf and just doesn't get utilized anymore. And this is a sad, long line of instances. Twisted Metal, Resistance, Killzone, Siphon Filter. You name it, they've cocked it up. Like, they had opportunities and they continue to step on the rake. It hurts to see the Sony that I really enjoyed growing up being this arrogant and this foolish about their decisions moving forward. But it's coming. Like, they've got a bad situation on their hands, and it's going to take a long time for them to right this ship. Yeah, SOCOM too. That was mentioned in chat. There's too much for them to just flip around and suddenly make a good big change in the span of like a year or two before they release a new system. Like, this is going to take a while for Sony to get back if they're capable of doing it. Again, it goes back to finance. Is it feasibly like possible for them to make it back at this point? I don't know. Like, they'll have to do a lot more third party so that way they can get return on their finance. Like, all the spending, they need to start doing more third parties so they can at least see a return.
Yeah,
because we've seen how locking it in their little bubble does nothing. I don't know.
well,
It's
it's
wild.
a great point because the little bubble you're talking about that you're referring to is their own gamers who listen by the numbers, talk about buying first party games, and then actually buying first party games. And I think ultimately that is a solid issue. Please continue, sir.
No, that was all I had. It saddens me because I grew up on PlayStation 1 and PS2. I was all over the place on those back in the day. And after a bunch of hardware failed on me, I shifted over to Xbox to try it out. I liked the ecosystem more, and I've gotten their systems over time to continue playing the things so I could see what they're releasing, but it's not the same as it used to be. And it's sad because they have so many IPs that they've just kind of set to the side and said, nah, that's not important to us anymore. Like, that sucks as one of their fans from back in the day.
Indeed. Great points all around. You know, it's interesting. Will the insider, Broke Boy Lewis, actually said that, you know, Resistance was pitched and denied, right? A new Resistance. Even a remake of Resistance 1, which you've all been asking for, has been teased for years. That never materialized. You know, you talked about Twisted Metal, SOCOM. I mean, it just goes on and on. That Spider-Man multiplayer game. Holy crap. Who wouldn't want to be swinging around with your buddies? That looked amazing. No pun intended. First of all, I want to welcome in BitCloud. BitCloud, we're going to bring you in a second. I did want to go to Fuzzy real quick on this one. Fuzzy, look, The Last of Us 3 apparently not happening. And that comes the way of the creator. Like, if this came from a rumor mill or maybe someone else inside of Insomniac Games, you might be able to pass it off as, you know, that just that, a rumor. This is directly from Neil Druckmann himself. And obviously, he has talked about retiring because he wants to spend time with his family. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why you retire. And I would imagine that if he's saying this now, there's no Last of Us 3, does that ultimately mean ever? Without him running it, I think that's exactly what it means, because there is still no Uncharted, right? We keep getting remakes and rehashes. Supposedly, and again, I will be buying this, the God of War trilogy remade. That signed me up because that game's 20 years old. That trilogy is 20 years old. I'll take it. But what are your thoughts on Neil Druckmann's statement regarding, I mean, it kind of seems like line in the sand. There is not going to be a Last of Us 3.
I don't know how many negative things have to happen at Sony before people start to open their eyes and realize that something is amiss, whether it's mismanagement or you know, lack of funding or sustainability or something. We're talking about a team that was highly regarded, that had two key, you know, record-selling, record-breaking franchises. You had the Uncharted series and you had The Last of Us. And now neither one of them are going to continue, especially after they dumped all that money into factions, which, you know, never came out. They've remastered, you know, The Last of Us. I guess we'll get some more remasters of Uncharted. If Druckmann retires, so be it. But I don't know what else there is after recent layoffs, after, you know, Yoshida decided, yeah, I've had enough of being demoted, which people have called it as demotion way back when, and were told that they were, you know, being fanboys or whatever. But it just feels like Sony is, they're living high off of hardware numbers and you know, scraping by on their first party. Now, third party stuff, they're still making a ton of money because they sold all that hardware. There's enough of a customer base to, you know, support them through, you know, some of the Xbox AAA bangers like Call of Duty type of deal. That's still going to give them some of the finances to, you know, keep things going. But I don't know. Like, I've said this in other chats and things like that, where I would not be surprised if Sony either winds up getting acquired. I know I've said that many a times before. Maybe Amazon. I know a lot of people would probably prefer Apple, but Amazon would probably make the most sense at this point in time. But I don't think their survivability or their sustainability is as rock solid as people think. I don't know. Cancel 8 games within the past year or 9 games within the past year, billions of dollars or hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars lost on games you can't ship. That's, you know, money you can't recoup. They're not making some of their AAA franchises anymore, or at least it doesn't feel like it is. So if you're taking a studio that could handle 2 games at, you know, off and on at the same time type of deal, and, you know, narrowing them down to 1, and it seems like that's going to be it. Is that going to be the gold standard now across their first party? I don't know. I'm pretty sure, you know, BitCloud has a lot more to say on it, but it just feels like nobody's really pointing out that the building's on fire get the the water hoses or something to put it out, or at least talk about it. No, it's like everybody's turned their back and they're like, yeah, but what about Xbox? Xbox is dead, right? No, Xbox is dead because it's putting it's one of the few publishers putting AAA games on a regular basis on the other platform. But yeah, everybody wants to pay attention to what Xbox is doing or isn't doing, as opposed to what PlayStation isn't doing as far as their roadmap, their turnout, I don't know, their creativity. It just feels like they're not what we love them for, type of thing. Like their AAA games are classics that they're not even classics, so they're less than 5 years old in some cases before they remaster them. So it just feels like they're leaning on that as opposed to even remastering or redoing some of their classics. I mean, yeah, the God of War trilogy, we'll see how long that takes. But yeah, it just feels like they're a shadow of themselves. And I know I'll be clipped for it because PlayStation, is number one and Xbox dead, whatever. Like, the reality is they canceled 8 or 9 games. Xbox cancels one game like almost 8 years ago, and people still talk about Scalebound, but nobody's talking about all the games as a service canceled, or the lack of their first party, dipping into their bag of classics or hits that the actual fan base has been asking for. No, buy the remakes. Then maybe you'll get a new game. I don't know. I've rambled enough.
No, you make great points. First of all, I want to welcome back in BitCloud Gaming. Brother, it's great to have you here. If there's anyone that should be here to talk about PlayStation, it should be you, sir. If you don't know, he's Mr. Platinum himself. Him and I both have the same views and thoughts and theories of The Last of Us 2. Hated the story.
Loved
Hated
the gameplay.
The gameplay was freaking amazing. The graphics,
it's a shame
unbelievable.
that such an amazing innovation in gameplay for that series is tied to such a crappy story. That's just how I look at it, honestly.
Even worse than that, I hated what they did with Ellie. I'm on record saying that. But I'm going to say this right now.
Yeah, that ties what I'm going to say.
Absolutely fell in love with Abby.
Yeah.
Loved every second that I used her character. Hated what they did on the back end. That's not going to get any more, coverage. We don't know what happens to her. It was awful. But listen, we're not here for that. We said our piece. BitCloud. Neil Druckmann out here doing interviews. And listen, we know that he's going to Hollywood. He wants to make movies. He's on record on saying so. He's also, though, someone that wants to spend more time with his family. And that's also, he's on record on saying so. This is a pretty distinct line in the sand regarding The Last of Us and whether or not there's going to be a 3 or third in the long-running series. I don't think there's going to be. And I honestly, and I'll say this, and if you clip me, it's fine. If this comes back to hurt me or bite me in the ass at another point, that's fine too. I don't know if there is a Last of Us without a Neil Druckmann. You understand where I'm going with this? I don't know if there could be. I mean, for chasing the dollar and slapping a 3 on something and going, maybe. But I don't know if there is a Last of Us 3 without a Neil Druckmann. What are your thoughts on the fact that it appears, based on his statements, that there won't be one?
So right now, I'm at a weird stalemate on his statement because I don't know if y'all saw, they just announced, really at the worst time, they announced a Last of Us $90 controller.
I did see that.
Game.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
mind you, I made a joke about this and dudes are getting emotional because I said it, but I'm like, you know what? That's a great controller. I would have loved to play Factions with that controller. I was like, you know what? Never mind. Too soon.
But you're not wrong, sir.
but they came out with a $90 keyword $90 Last of Us controller. So right off the bat, I flat out, you guys already know Sony loves to, like, Silent Cypher actually said it very, very well done. It's a really good point where you said they run a lot of stuff into the ground. They really, really do. Like, when something's hip and now, they'll run it until the wheels come off. You need another example of the game other than the games you mentioned. Look at Horizon. Horizon has lost so much damn
I literally said that in the opening.
It's insane how much steam that game has lost. And going into just going towards The Last of Us, again, me and you, again, we talked about it. A lot of dudes came at us when we gave our reviews for the game. It was a fun time. I will say that. But looking at it, I mean, honestly, I do honestly believe just because of their track record, all it takes is one little email from Sony saying, "Hey, listen, we need part 3." And we'll throw it out, Neil, and it's going to happen. And to your point about will it even be the same without Neil? The answer is simple: no. The reason why is because Neil was the creative mastermind behind part 2, and only he knows the pieces to complete the story for a part 3, if that makes sense. The reason why I said Neil is because Evan Wells, that's his name. Evan Wells was with Naughty Dog at the time of Last of Us Part 1, and he helped co-write it with Neil, and that's why it's, what I'm saying, it's so vastly different. You could tell it was written by 2 different people because there was a lot of great ideas that bounced off of one another. You see what I'm saying with this? To where it wasn't a straightforward, like, oh, this is where it's going to be. No, Last of Us 1 had a lot of twists and turns that made it special. Like the whole thing with Sam getting bitten, the whole cure, the Firefly's true intention, all that stuff. It was well done. Part 2, it's just a revenge is bad story. You know what I'm saying? And they're demonizing the character that we know for a fact is not a bad guy because we played part 1. But again, just going off of everything, especially with the TV show too. That's the other thing you got to take into account. The TV show won an Emmy, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
The first season. This is season 2. And I'm not sure how they're going to do season 2. I doubt season 2 is going to be a shot for shot, the exact same as Last of Us 2, the game, because they already didn't do that with part 1 in season 1. They changed a lot with the clickers, like the whole cordyceps thing. If you touch a certain part in the ground, it alerts them. I think certain ideas they might rip from the TV show if they were to make a 3 and just shoehorn that into 3 and just give you, hey, this is just our ending type of thing. If Neil is not involved type of thing, they'll just run it to there just for the sake of getting out there, and they'll treat it like a quick cash grab, and that's it. That's honestly kind of like the best case scenario. And the reason why I say that's the best case scenario, because you get something new. But the worst case scenario is what you already are getting right now, which is Last of Us Part 1 repackaged. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Last of Us Part 2 repackaged for a second time. Wasted resources, wasted man hours, wasted time, wasted money for a game that we all can agree. We all will agree, because I'm pretty sure you guys have already seen the games before they even got the remasters. They didn't need visual upgrades. They were already pretty looking games. You know what could use a visual upgrade and a remake and a remaster? Resistance. SOCOM. Parappa the Rapper.
Yep.
Ape Escape. Siphon Filter.
Oh, that's another big one.
Do you see where I'm going with this? There are tons of games in Sony's library, and they're not utilizing it. So it's funny when I say this in videos, dudes try to say, oh, Big Cloud, you're just trying to be Dealer Gaming. Shout out to Dealer Gaming. I'm friends with him, but still, no, I'm not trying to be Dealer Gaming. I'm just being honest with you about a problem. And the problem is, it's still happening right in front of you. I don't know if y'all covered the whole thing about Sony now leasing consoles. That's very similar to what Microsoft did. I'm letting you guys know, even though they're financing, this is different. There's so much sinister stuff going on, and people are turning eyes away from it, and are just honestly putting their attention towards things I never thought they would do. I remember me and Boom, we had like, it wasn't even a heated debate, but we had like it was kind of like a heated exchange, because everybody was bouncing off each other. I don't know if you remember this, Boom. Remember how we talked about the world without the console war? And everybody was like, and dudes were coming at us and like, oh, Xbox needs to go. We were going at it. Okay, so we're kind of in a scenario right now where Xbox is not technically mentioned, right? You notice how the conversation is still in the console war bubble. Yes. The only difference is, instead of it going from, oh, these games suck, it's now going to a petty extreme of just saying like, oh, it just don't sell and all this dumb stuff. When the reality is your games are not selling as well. Nobody's looking at the big picture at the end of the day. The future of all these platforms, and they're showing it right now, is open platform. It's multi-platform. There's too much of a risk. A good example, and again, exclusives, you can clip me. I already know people are gonna clip me. Clip this, because this is common knowledge. Exclusives can absolutely push a platform, especially if it comes out in the right time. It's a good game and it makes sense. You need an example of this. Look at Uncharted 2 with PlayStation.
Perfect. My
did.
favorite game in the series. Still, to this day,
one of the greatest.
My favorite in the entire freaking series.
That game,
I play it yearly.
Yes, that game established a new mascot for PlayStation and a new era for PlayStation. People actually looked at PlayStation 3 serious. Notice since then, right? Since Sony has kind of, has won people over, you don't have those lightning in a bottle moments anymore, or even attempts, because they're not trying. Silent Cypher said it perfectly, and I agree with him 110%. There is a problem here. The problem is one side clearly was trying, and they're dropping games, which is Xbox. They're dropping games. Sony is relying on the same stuff that already is established.
Yep.
And are running them into the ground. Days Gone did not need a remaster. No one asked for a remaster for Days Gone, especially when
people asked for a sequel, including the developers, and they didn't get one, which is a shame, because again, it's one of those games that listen, I played through it. I never beat it. That game is big. That game is really, really big. Yeah. But it's really good. And you're right. No one asked for a remaster, but people did ask for a sequel bit.
Yep. We can't get a sequel. Okay. You don't want to give us a sequel, but you give us a remaster. And, and people wonder why John Garvin, who was the lead of the game at the time, is so pissed off. I'll tell you why he's pissed off, because he had an idea for a sequel. He had a good idea to push it further, but he never got a chance to do that. So now they're just playing with everybody's emotions, and they're repackaging something that doesn't need to be repackaged. It's not going to sell even more.
But you know why else John Garvin is really upset and butthurt about all this?
What's up?
Because he was part of Siphon Filter and he got shafted on that too.
There you go.
It's insane. Like people think people are just being petty in the PlayStation shop for the sake of being petty. No, it's deeper than that. A lot of people have more connections than you think when it comes to a lot of these projects. And I feel bad for John to this day. John, I know John could do for a good game because he already did it with Days Gone. The thing is, though, again, Sony is now at this point where they're running that game, that hype that we've already had. You're running into the ground because you're giving them not even hype type of announcements. You're giving them just not even lukewarm announcements. It's stuff that could have been a tweet. It's something that me and Boom or you guys would tweet on Twitter that we call rumors. Literally, it's the exact same thing. So when you look at the current state of PlayStation, you look at the fact that, and people get upset when I say this, but it's a fact. We have more canceled games than new experiences from PlayStation.
But you're not wrong, though. People don't want to admit that, but you're not being console worry or being a jerk. You're just stating actual facts.
Yeah. Yes. Returnal. Like, again, people got mad at me when I said, I really wouldn't mind if Sorrows was multi-platform. I think it would benefit Housemarque greatly if it was multi-platform day one. Why? For those of you that forgot, because a lot of people seem to have amnesia in the PlayStation community, when Returnal came out, it peaked at like 700,000 on the PlayStation 5 by itself. Now it's at like 800,000 on PlayStation. And it didn't do good on PC. You know why it didn't do good on PC? Because they were asking for full price for a game that was like what 3 years out, 2 years. It was a minute. It was a long time before it came out. You can't do that. And a lot of people, again, it's just such a weird situation because a lot of people now have selective hearing, with the whole Shuhei Yoshida situation. Shuhei Yoshida flat out said we're trying to grow in the U.S. and China markets. Let's separate those for a second here, okay? Let's talk about the China market. The China market is dominated completely by PC.
Yes.
How do you grow in the China market? Dropping games on console? Limited consoles? No. You have to strike when the iron is hot and go full on PC day one. And you're already getting day and date releases at shows. What was that game called? Lost Souls Aside just broke the trend.
Yeah.
Now, the US, Again, back to Xbox in a sense. Dude's like, oh, you don't talk about Xbox enough. Okay, well, if we're looking at the console perspective right now, and in the US, Sony has outsold Microsoft. This is common knowledge. Nobody cares. It's common knowledge. But how do you expand beyond the US right now when you already have the market cap? You go day and date PC releases.
Right. Which I think they're gonna do with the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. I think Ghost of Yotai is first. Again, it's just speculation, but I think that's actually going to be the first day and date title.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't understand like what people are on. I really, really don't. People have this like weird selective fear, like I said before, and for what reason, I have no idea. People talk about how exclusives are the reason why I bought this platform. Fuzzy know I'm about to go with this because a certain studio just went bye-bye.
Yep.
Ballistic Moon.
Yep.
Ballistic Moon came out with Until Dawn remake. We said this, just like we said Days Gone didn't need a remake. We all said this on this panel. Nobody wants this. Dudes in the chat. Oh, sure. Y'all just want to hate on everything PlayStation. PlayStation doing this. If you guys don't like it, boom. You don't like it, boom. Don't buy it. Well, guess what? Reality sucks, doesn't it? Because nobody bought it, and the studio is now no more. This is the drawbacks of having something exclusive. When you're at the mercy of a community that is so picky when it comes to the games they want to buy and support, very picky. If it ain't a God of War, excuse me, if it ain't a damn Horizon, and that's if at this point, if it ain't a Horizon or a damn Last of Us. There ain't no odds that shit's gonna sell. Uncharted, shit. You got Uncharted. Sony is so desperate to go back to Uncharted and restart Uncharted, even though we got a perfect 4 games. We got 4 perfect games. Then look at 5, right? We got 5 perfect games at this point. Why can't we move on past Uncharted and make the new series, make the new evolution? I'll tell you why. Because Sony's obsessed with catching the same type of energy that they had prior. I'll put it like this. I've said Sony's creatively bankrupt, and it really is. I'm going to tell you why they're creative bankrupt. If you guys look at the current regime of PlayStation, technically all the suits are running PlayStation now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Back then, when we had all these crazy games, they kept throwing stuff, and we were like, damn, there's so much to play. I want you to understand something. I'm going to name these names. All you should be synonymous with these names, but because they all have one thing in common. Gio Corsi, shout out to Gio Corsi. It's my man right there. He was the head of the Vita and everything. Kaz Hirai, Sean Layton, Jack Tritton, Adam Boyes, Shuhei Yoshida, Andrew House. All these guys.
Ken Kutaragi.
All these guys were gamers. PlayStation was run by actual gamers. PlayStation is no longer run by gamers. It is run by businessmen who see more opportunity to improve their profit margins. Keyword, their profit margins. If Sony is making more money on PC in a fiscal year than they are on just selling games directly on their own platform, that is a problem.
Yep.
And they weren't even day-and-day releases, boom. Well, one was, but that was Helldivers, and that was their biggest release game. So we take Steam out of the equation, they only made $700 million in the third quarter of last year. With PC and the day-and-day release of Helldivers, they made an additional $875 million.
Yep.
Think about that.
And that was thanks to Steam. Because like I said, PlayStation gamers like myself bought it, but the majority of the sales, and I would even go as far as say it's somewhere upwards of, I think it sold 14 million, which is freaking great, right? That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And what 4 million, 5 million on PS5.
That seems to be the trend. That seems to be the trend. Like the first party games are selling like in the 2 millions, close to 2 millions. And like you'll have a few third party games that are, pretty well established that might do 3 or 5, right? But most of the money is going towards Steam. Steam is carrying everything. Yep. And people keep talking about how like consoles have GTA and it's exclusive. I promise you, and you can clip this. This would be the last GTA consoles ever have for a year of exclusivity. Should be the last one. After this, everything releases day and date in PC because everything will already be day and date by the time GTA 7 drops.
Yep.
It's gonna be
In
flush.
10 years from now, by the way.
Yeah, we're gonna be. I'm gonna be in my 40s, but
Fuzzy Tomato says he thinks that it's 18 million. Wow, that's freaking great. If it's 18 million, holy matrimony, that's a lot for Helldivers 2.
Oh yeah,
which is and if it's that high, that's awesome for Helldivers 2 and that studio, which goes to show you that if they release that on Xbox, how many more players they would get would be crazy.
Oh,
but
yeah.
PC, make no mistake, PC is leading the charge for Helldivers.
there's no ifs or buts about it. There's a reason why there was so much outrage over the logins. People sound like, oh, people just want to fall in line. No, the PC community stands on business. The very thing that PlayStation dudes gave you the illusion that they were going to be about. If you look at the PS4 gym, remember the start, the DRM requirements, the online check-ins, all that stuff. Everybody they put their foot down. You thought, okay, maybe the PlayStation dudes can have a good future. You look at it now, you so much as call out a price hike, you're the bad guy. You so much as call out a studio not getting out here, giving us updates or a roadmap, you're the bad guy. This is how dudes have conditioned themselves with PlayStation. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Every time there's a problem, they mask the problem and bring up Xbox, even though Xbox has nothing to do with said problem. It's not Microsoft's problem or Microsoft's doing that Sony has no games from their own first-party studios in their own lineup. That doesn't make sense.